A British loyalist resided here. The revolutionaries didn't take kindly to loyalists, and one fine day they mobbed the house, throwing rocks from where you're standing right now. They demanded that he came out and face a traitor's fate. But the judge never showed his face. You see, the judge was slowly dying of smallpox inside the house. He was unable to move, and the following day he took his last breath, leaving his body, but not his house. Legend has it, his ghost now haunts these halls, perhaps waiting for the British Empire to return. The judge is occasionally seen sitting in his seat, where he debated politics with the likes of John Adams. He's also seen roaming the halls. He could be looking down at you right now. But he's not the most infamous ghost to haunt the Ropes mansion. That title belongs to old spooky Nabby. Turn left here and walk through the white gate towards the garden arbor just ahead. We're heading to the sundial in the center of the garden. Watch your step in the gravelly path. Walk straight, ghost hunters. I'll meet you in the garden. If the ghosts don't get you first. Continue straight to the center of the garden. There you will find the sundial in the center of the circle. Stop when you get there. As you walk, keep an eye out for any spirits lurking in the shadows. They're known to often wander these grounds. Stop at the sundial and look at the back door of the Ropes mansion. The mansion's most notorious ghost is Abigail Ropes, now known as Nabby. Nabby inhabited these halls for the majority of her life. Unmarried, she rarely left the premises, spending her days tending to the house and the garden. Things took a turn for the worst when her parents and her sister passed away, leaving her alone and helpless. Nabby became a recluse, constantly yelling at her servants and rarely leaving the property. On one tragic winter's day, as she cared for the hot coals of the fire, her dress went up in flames. Look up at the second floor above the door. Do you see the one window open with 24 panes? It stands out from the rest. This is the room where Nabby often stood, looking out on the garden. It's also in that room that she nearly burnt to death as the flames engulfed her body. She screamed for help, but no one came to rescue. The servants dare not face one of her verbal lashings. In the end, she suffered third-degree burns on 90% of her body. For 3 weeks, she wasted away, crying in agony, before finally succumbing to death. Today, her screams can be heard throughout the property. She's often seen peering out of the second-floor window, waving to visitors below. The Ropes Mansion staff is known to close all the shades of the building when Nabby is most active. If they're closed, it's likely she's on the prowl. It's also common at those times to see Nabby's burnt ghost haunting the garden. Look around the garden. Nabby is known to whisper into intruders' ears and tap them lightly on the shoulder with her icy cold fingers. She should be just behind you right now. Let us move to our next ghostly tale. With your back to the sundial, walk back up the path to Essex Street and turn left when you get there, following the sidewalk. As you walk to your left, do you see the bench? Nabby and other spirits are said to linger in this area, hiding just out of sight. Nabby's death was accidental. Our next stop's history was quite intentional, and their intention was to ride the world of witches. This was once home to John Corwin, the judge of the infamous Salem witch trials, and legend has it, the pre-trial examinations of the accused witches were held in this house. During the Salem witch trials, hundreds of Salem residents were accused and arrested for witchcraft. By the time it finished, 19 people were hung, and one was pressed to death. We'll see their memorial soon. Amazingly enough, if the accused would have simply confessed to witchcraft, they would have lived. You see, the punishment for pleading not guilty to witchcraft was death by hanging, but the punishment for actually admitting to witchcraft was a few months in jail. One would think everyone would just admit to witchcraft, But the Puritans that first settled here had such strong beliefs in their religion, they'd rather die knowing they were going to heaven than admit to being a witch and burning in hell. The witch trials were a tradition brought over from Europe. As many as 100,000 had been accused of it and burnt at the stake for witchcraft between 1450 and 1750. 75% of them were women. Today, witch hunts are still practiced in sub-Saharan Africa, the Congo, and Saudi Arabia, where laws prohibiting witchcraft are still enforced. The witch house is the only structure still standing that's associated to the Salem witch trials, and its ghosts have no plans of leaving. Look up to the second floor. It's said in its halls the voice of a young girl can be heard, and on occasion she's known to touch visitors as they walk the halls. Some believe this is the ghost of Dorothy Good, the youngest child accused of witchcraft during the trials. She was only 5 years old. The witch house has been featured on multiple ghost programs, including Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel, where they're able to pick up the young girl's voice on tape. Today, it's a museum open to the public. With your back to the witch house, turn left and cross Summer Street when it's safe. Cars mostly drive slow in these parts. After you've crossed the street, make an immediate right and follow the sidewalk down Summer Street. You'll pass Jerry's on your left with those cute little fake ghosts in the window. Jerry wishes his place was haunted, but the store is only plagued with good deals. Continue down Summer Street. You'll pass an electric box painted with bees on your left. The Salem Inn's building was built in 1834, and in that time, many have haunted its grounds. Possibly the ghostliest of stories are from the visitors themselves. In the sitting room of the Salem Inn sits a diary documenting the ghostly encounters guests have witnessed. Continue straight down Salem Street. Stop at the Salem Inn. Walk just past the Salem Inn to the alley on the left, just next to the sign hanging on the corner of the building. Stop when you get there. Ghosts seem to be drawn to the Salem Inn. Possibly they're looking for their final resting place. The diary has recorded that doorknobs have often turned on their own. Doors open and close, cold spots are common, and items are misplaced. Look up to the fourth floor. It said the old Colonel West, the original owner, roams this floor. A recent guest wrote in the diary of his stay in room 40. He said, "I woke up about dawn and saw a figure standing on the balcony. I sat up quickly and said, 'Who are you?' And suddenly the figure vanished." A common apparition seems to haunt the creepy breakfast room in the basement. A middle-aged woman is often seen there, peeking her head into the courtyard from the window. Look at the second floor now. It's also a popular haunt. The most haunted of all rooms is that of room 17. Visitors that attempt to sleep here often suffer from sleepless nights. They never know what'll happen. The diary reports phantom gunshots, yelling, banging on the walls, the pressure of someone sitting on the bed while they sleep, and the ghosts even communicating with them. One woman reported seeing a man in a long coat and asked him, "Who are you?" He replied, "Don't touch me. The dullness rubs off," and then vanished into thin air. If you're interested in staying the night, I'd suggest room 17, 40, or 13 for a frighteningly sleepless night. Facing the Salem Inn, turn left and walk back up to Essex Street, passing that cute bee painting on your right. The history and trauma of the Salem witch trials run deep. Each street tells a story of characters that have participated. Just ahead, we'll go to the home that's linked to the start of the Salem witch trials. Turn right on Essex Street and continue with Jerry's department store on your right. You'll also pass Bonchon on your right. Their wings have haunted my dreams with tasty flavour for years. The Salem witch trials finally ended on October the 12th, 1692. when Governor Phipps's own wife was accused of being a witch. At that point, he shut the whole trial down, saying this was all a bunch of nonsense. Obviously, witches don't exist. Or do they? Walk straight to Crombie Street and stop there. To your left is Sewell Street, where the lonely ghost of the county clerk now lurks. In 1692, the Salem witch trials were sparked when a 12-year-old Abigail Williams and her cousin, 9-year-old Betty Paris, accused John Proctor of witchcraft. Stop on Crombie and look left down Sewell Street. There, you'll see the door of the YMCA. The girls suffered from fits that drew the attention of the people of Salem. It was clear they were shaking, barking, and acting all crazy. What would be the origin of this madness? A doctor was brought in to diagnose what was going on. After his in-depth analysis, he proclaimed they were in fact cursed by a witch. To save the girls from the witch's curse, they were moved to Stephen Sewell's home in this very street. Soon after their arrival, their fits subsided, and the question remained, who was the witch that cursed them? The finger-pointing began, and wouldn't you know it, more children were afflicted with the curse. Today, Stephen Sewell is said to haunt the street bearing his name. Maybe he feels guilty for the role he played as county clerk. Or maybe he's searching for redemption. Or maybe he heard about Bonchon's chicken wings. I guess we'll never know. With Sewell Street on your left, continue straight down Essex Street, passing the Life Alive on your right. If you're a vegetarian, Life Alive is one fine establishment. Salem today is known as the Witch City, and some of that credit can be given to spoons. Yes, I said spoons, like the type you eat ice cream with. In 1890, Seth Lowe, the son of Daniel Lowe, was on a trip in Germany when he had an idea. Let's put witches on spoons and sell them as souvenirs of Salem for the 200th anniversary of the Salem witch trials. A few curious tourists had begun visiting Salem, and the Lowes planned on cashing in. The witch spoon became the first witch souvenir in Salem, and the first spoon souvenir in the US. But unfortunately, the tourists soon stopped coming. And in the mid-1900s, Salem was once again an unknown and impoverished town. In the park on the right, just on the corner of Essex and Washington Street, you'll see a statue of the famous TV witch, Samantha, from the show Bewitched. If you're here during October, this spot is probably mobbed. Stop when you get to the statue. The 6-foot-tall statue depicts the actress Elizabeth Montgomery in the 1960s classic TV show Bewitched. In the show, she plays Samantha, a witch who tried to live a normal life with her boring old husband. If you look at the statue, you'll see her riding a broom with a half moon behind her. It's well done indeed. The show has a deeper connection to Salem than many know. In fact, Salem owes much of its tourism to Samantha. In the 70s, the Bewitched studio burnt down, and they needed a place to film. Those clever Hollywood people thought, hey, instead of making a fake set, why don't we just film in the Witch City? Those episodes are now known as the Salem Saga and featured many of the famous landmarks in Salem. And it was a hit. Crowds flocked to see the filming locations. A new tourism industry flourished in Salem. Soon after, Salem began its annual Haunting Happenings celebrations, and today, 100,000 people visit each weekend in October. In 2005, this statue was erected in the show's honor, sponsored by TV Land. If you're interested in watching the Salem Saga, it's available on Prime Video. Turn around with the statue to your back. Look across the street. Do you see the Rockefeller? That's the old Daniel Lowe building, our Witch City spoon inventor, and the building itself is known as a local haunt. Look up to the 4th floor tower. The ghost of the priest is often seen looking down at the tourists as they pass. Surely he's saying some prayer, as those priests do. Can you see him now? He certainly sees you. Let's continue. Walk straight and cross Washington Street when it's safe and walk to the corner of the Rockefeller. I'll meet you just outside its windows. Stop on the walkway just outside the windows of the Rockefeller. Peek in, if you will. This building has a storied history in Salem. It was once the site of the first church in Salem. It was also home to smugglers, thieves, and brothels. What a lovely combination. In order for smugglers to hide their goods and avoid paying taxes, they dug an intricate system of tunnels below Salem, leading from the sea to many of the buildings in town. In total, the tunnels span 3 miles and still exist today. Back up to the fountain and look to the left side of the building. There you will see an engraving that says, "The First Church in 1629. A successful sea captain once operated out of this building, and the tunnels brought him great wealth. With his fortune, he arranged for a young, beautiful woman to be his bride. And this is where our story takes a dark turn. To your left, do you see the alley? It's just to the left of the black colonial hall awning. Walk to the alley and find the plaque on the right side of the alley, just near the corner. It notes the location of the first church in Salem. Stop in the alley when you get there. In this alley, in the church that once stood here, a horrible crime was committed. While the captain was out at sea, his young bride-to-be had fallen in love with a young and handsome sailor, as young girls often do. The sailor proposed to her, and she said yes. The two planned to wed immediately and flee Salem, escaping the captain's clutches. They were standing in this very spot, hand in hand, and the priest was about to pronounce them man and wife, when suddenly the captain showed up. He was carrying a long scrap wood board in his hand, and the old man was ready to fight. As he swung with all his might, the captain missed the sailor, and the board crushed the head of our young damsel. She looked dead, and the 3 men agreed they had to hide her deep in the tunnels and never speak of this again. But it seems the damsel did not agree. Today she's said to haunt this property, wearing a blue dress, and the locals have dubbed her the Lady in Blue. She could be just below in the basement of the Rockefeller, or in the alley right now. The priest was found dead shortly after. His spirit is said to haunt the 4th floor tower. Let's continue. With the Rockefeller and the alley on your right, walk straight down the Essex walking street. You will pass the Twilight House on your right. Our next stop is Wicked Books. Like many of the old buildings in Salem, the underground tunnels run beneath this building. Look in the windows of the bookstore. Recently, bones were discovered in the tunnels below. That helps to explain the ghostly antics that have long plagued the bookstore. Employees say books often fly off the shelves, soaring around the room. Doors open and shut freely, and cold spots are common on hot days, even without the AC on. No one knows whose bones they are, but it seems they plan on sticking around. Turn right on Derby Street and walk towards the old town hall, walking around it to the right. If this spot looks familiar, it should. This was the location of the Halloween party in the spooky film Hocus Pocus. You may remember this as the scene where Bette Midler sung, "I Put a Spell on You." Continue walking around the old town hall, following the path to the right. Continue walking past the old town hall to Front Street just ahead. This area is known as Derby Square, named after Elias Haskett Derby, best known as America's first millionaire. He made his money, as many did back then, from trade, and I'm sure he used those underground tunnels to avoid paying taxes. Look up at the Old Town Hall's window. Old Town Hall is said to be haunted by ghosts of the tunnels and smugglers, but no clear stories exist of the ghost's origin. Some do say you can see them walking in this square. Do watch your step as you move forward. With the Old Town Hall to your back, walk down the stairs to Front Street and turn right. One of the most wicked men of the Salem witch trials was its sheriff, George Corwin. He was the nephew of Judge Corwin, and he was appointed to his position by his corrupt and powerful uncle. If you've not already, turn right on Front Street following the sidewalk on your right. Continue to Washington Street. George enjoyed abusing his power as sheriff. In his basement, he was known to choke prisoners he arrested until they were close to death. At the last moment, he would remove his grasp, allowing them to gasp for air. His acts were so feared and notorious, he was known as the Strangler. It's believed many died in his hands. He also accused, arrested, and hung many in Salem during the witch trials. But his most heinous act was that of the pressing of 82-year-old Giles Corey. Do you see the red fire pole just to your left across from Front Street? It's on the corner of Front Street and Washington Street. Stop at the fire pole. I'll meet you there. With the first pole to your back, look just across Washington Street at the building just to the right of the Dunkin' Donuts. This is the Merchant Hotel, and historically is known as the Joshua Ward House. The structure was built in the late 1700s and is the oldest brick building in Salem. This building was so grand that in 1789, George Washington himself stayed here for 2 nights while visiting Salem. This is also the site of George Corwin's home back in 1692, and many say the Strangler was buried in these cursed grounds. His spirit now terrorizes the property until today, and this is known as one of the most haunted properties in Salem. Visitors on many occasions have reported a grasp at their throat and the tightening of what feels like fingers around their neck, as if they were being choked. Others have spent the night and the following day discovered unexplained scratches on their body. And that's just the start of the spooky tales that have come from the visitors. If you're interested, it's said room 7 is the most haunted of all. Be sure to book early. Let's move on. Turn around. With the Joshua Ward House to your back, walk back down Front Street passing the old town hall on your left. Salem is not only known as the Witch City, it also has a deep maritime past. In 1790, Salem was a world-famous port and the 6th largest in the USA. For that reason, it saw its fair share of wealth and tragedies. Front Street here was once the waterfront. In 1790, to your right, ships would dock, and just below your feet, the tunnels ran to smuggle goods. Oh, these city streets have seen witches, pirates, murders, and vampires alike. You never know what you might meet. Continue straight on Front Street, passing Artist Row on your right. And Front Street has seen its fair share of murder. At night, it's said the ghosts of those unnamed sailors stroll these streets, possibly looking for the entrance to the underground, or possibly looking for their next victim. I'll meet you at 15 Front Street ahead. Stop at 15 Front Street on your right. It's the skinny red brick building just before the parking lot. Here once stood the Salem Jail. Look into its front windows. In April 1906, Harry Houdini, or as many called him, the Great Houdini, arrived in Salem, putting on 3 unexplainably marvelous shows. But the old sheriff thought he was a fraud, so he challenged him to escape from this building, the Salem Jail. Houdini was stripped naked and placed in 3 pairs of handcuffs, along with 2 sets of leg irons. He was then locked in the middle cell, thought to be the most secure. In only 13 minutes, Houdini escaped his cuffs, opened the neighboring cell, freed the prisoner, and put on his clothing. Together with the freed prisoner, they walked to the front window, where the sheriff looked on in awe. Houdini's spirit does not haunt here. That title goes to LA, Montreal, and Savannah. But you can be sure a few of the murderous prisoners are still lurking in the dark. On your right, look for the white, slightly dilapidated house. This was once the home to the Peabody sisters and is known as the Grimshaw House. Nathaniel Hawthorne met his wife, Sophia Peabody, in this very house. and they often took midnight strolls in the old Burying Point cemetery just next door. What a terrifyingly cute activity. Nathaniel Hawthorne, author of The Scarlet Letter and The House of the Seven Gables, has a grave connection to this cemetery. 8 of his ancestors are buried here. Just past the Grimshaw house is the Old Point Burying Ground. It's the second oldest burial ground in the US. Of note, Judge Hawthorne, Nathaniel's great-great-grandfather, is buried here. Stop at the burial ground's gates for a moment and look in. The most common haunt that is reported here is that of the lady in white. She is said to walk through the stones gracefully from the back of the cemetery to the entrance here, wearing a simple white dress. Many believe this to be the ghost of Mary Corey, searching for her lost love, Giles Corey. And legend has it, when the two spirits do meet, the curse will be broken. I guess love is eternal after all. Facing the cemetery, turn left. At the corner, here you'll find a grey building that is of typical First Federal style. It's old and creepy. This is the Samuel Pickman House and is believed to be one of Salem's oldest buildings, built in 1664. It's also haunted as an insane asylum, abandoned in the 1950s. Stop just in front of the house on the corner with the red border around the windows. Look in if you can. As legend has it, in the 1700s, a family of 3 once lived here. Not long after they moved in, the husband's mental health began to deteriorate. He screamed he could hear demons talking to him, and his family feared for their lives. On a dark and stormy night, the father decided to chain his daughter up in the attic, as if the demons had instructed him to do so. He tortured and starved the child for days. When the wife finally spoke up against his actions, he dragged her outside by her hair, tied her to a tree, and poured hot wax all over her head until she slowly died. The man knew there was no hope and fled the house, leaving the dead wife and child behind. Walk around the house, following the red painted trail to the right. Once you get to the side of the house, look up to the attic window on the 3rd floor. Today, the daughter still resides in the attic, looking down at the tourists that passed, trapped for eternity in her own hell, waiting for her mother to save her. Let's move on before the husband returns. Facing the attic window, turn left and follow the red painted trail for 30 feet ahead. Just to the right is the Salem Witch Trail Memorial. Stop at the entrance. I'll meet you there. Look into the Salem Witch Trail Memorial. Along the edge, you'll see the plaques of each of the 20 victims of the trials. Their names and date of death appear on each stone bench. Look down to the ground of the entrance of the memorial. There you will see the words of the victims' protests. These are their recorded words from the Salem witch trials. They screamed, "For my life now lies in your hands. On my dying day, I am no witch. God knows I am innocent. Oh Lord, help me." They knew if they pleaded guilty, they would live. But still, they said, "If I would confess, I should save my life. I do plead not guilty." The black locust trees planted here are intentional. It's believed this is the type of tree the victims were hung on. This location was chosen so the dead could face their judge for eternity. Move around the memorial, following it to the left. There you will pass many names you may have heard in the crucible. Walk to the back left of the memorial and look out to the cemetery. Here, I have one final ghost to share. Of all the evils of the trial, it's said Judge John Hawthorne was one of the cruelest. He was known to torture the accused and very quick to sentence them to death. After the trials, he showed no remorse in his actions and lived well into his 70s. Look out into the cemetery. Judge Hawthorne's ghost is known to haunt near his headstone. It's near the back left corner to your immediate left. The tombstone itself is very boxy in shape, and you can only see the back of it from here. Many visitors have reported picking up strange orbs, and even the ghost of the judge himself in pictures